Model Making Guru is sponsored by emodels.co.uk, your one-stop shop for all your model making needs. emodels.co.uk. Make something awesome. Hey everyone, it's Foxx from Model Making Guru here. Hello, and welcome to part 2 of our build of the Space Marine Landspeeder Storm. Yes, now don't panic, we've not jumped ahead, you've not missed anything. We're going to crack on back with the vehicle in a moment. If you notice on the last episode, it kind of stopped halfway through. It's because I'd had everything filmed for episode 1, but I was running out of time. I didn't have a lot of time to do the editing, so I had to cut it into 2 halves and post one up last time so you had something to watch. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had that and you'd be waiting another week. So I've put episode 1 up and I'm kind of filmed a big chunk of episode 2, which you're going to see in a moment. I just wanted to do this now as the intro and stay there. We will get to the figures either later on this episode or in the next episode. Now, it won't be a here's me painting the figure thing. Unfortunately, I can't film it. I tried, I can't film it, but we'll just be giving you a quick update. So to that end, I've done all the base coats, all the base colours have been done. I've left him with just the base colours done, although I did forget and give him an oil wash on the weapon. So he's just had base colours done, nothing else. So he's going to be the one I'll be trying to show you some bits on, at least. I can show you, the shades and stuff. I can't show you the complex painting. So we'll get to those anyway, either later this episode or in the next one. But it'll only be a quick, here's what I've done, because I can't film it. Anyway, let's crack on. Let's get back to the vehicle. I think where we left off last time, if I remember, we had just started doing the cowcatcher on the front. So, with no further ado, we'll get back onto that. Or even get back onto that even. See, I've started talking rubbish already. Okay, so that's dried now. So it's looking pretty good, looking nice and metally. Not quite shiny, but that's not a problem. Next step, get out the Nuln oil. Nuln oil. Get yourself a big brush. Where's my big brush? There we go, that'll do. And we're just going to quite liberally apply Nuln oil to this. Not being careful, not being thoughtful. Just slap it on. Now, of course, this is going to make it go matte, but that's fine. There are things we'll be doing later on in this build to bring back the bling to some of the metallics. So just get the shade on there. Don't just slap it on and leave it. Do get it on there and then move it around. Because like I said earlier on, you don't want it to pool and have big watermarks and tide marks. So get it on there and then just start spreading it around so it's kind of even. Now it will collect towards the tops here, but that's fine. It just looks darker then. And as I say, there is stuff going to go on here later on, so it's not the end of the world if it looks a little bit patchy. Don't worry too much. Just get it on there. Okay, so all the Nuln oil and Agrax Earthshade is dried. As you can see now, everything's looking a lot darker. These little sort of knapsack things on the front are good, and the skulls. The Agrax Earthshade is collected in the little eye sockets and jaws, so it just gives them some definition. We'll be bringing those back. Dashboard looks a bit darker now because I gave it some Nuln oil, and it's also dirtied up the buttons. Weapons in the back, they're still drying a little bit, and I don't know if they'll come out on camera, but they're looking a bit more weapony now. And I did the underside, as I drop it, did the engines, and I did the engines on the back as well. What we did here was a couple of washes of the Nuln oil, just to dirty it all up. I went round the green parts here with the Nuln oil as well, it's still drying on there. And then on this bit here, I just did one coat of Agrax Earthshade, just to give a slightly different tone. So it looks like maybe heated steel or something. It's not quite the heated metal effect, but it just gives it that slight heat stained effect. I'm not going to put anything on here, I don't think. I think I'll just keep it on that one bit, because when you put it together, it just makes a nice little variation. So we'll see how that goes. So there's lots more to do to those metallics. I also gave a Nuln oil wash down here, just to darken everything up. So, what we need to do now is, apart from doing the leather seats and everything else, we need to start bringing back some of these details that we've washed over. So we'll do these buttons first, because they're the easiest. We're going to go back to our screaming skull that we painted it with originally. Tiny amount of water in there. A little bit of screaming skull on the brush. And exactly the same as before, we're just going to go in. I know it didn't actually show up on camera last time. We're going to go in and just bring these back. Now you might be wondering are asking, what was the point of doing these in the first place if we're just going to darken them with the wash, with the Nuln Oil, and then bring them back? Well, the point is, the Nuln Oil wash sort of collects around them. So you get that shading, because you can paint the tops like this, but it'd be really, really hard to actually paint the sides of the buttons, because they stick out, but they don't stick out massively. So what this does is it gives some definition to the buttons, and then by bringing them back, you're just making them stand out and be bright again. Just get that brush into a point. And that's quite often the way you'll do things with this Warhammer stuff. You'll paint it with your base colour, shade it, and then do your layering on top to bring it back. This is technically layering, but we're just using the same colour that we used to start with, so not really that much layering. There, it's better. Now I was going to leave these, do these and then do them back with white over the top. I was just using the Screaming Skull as a base for the white, but I actually quite like them being Screaming Skull because they're off-white, so they look a little bit used. So we're going to leave them like that. So I'll go off and finish all the other buttons here and there. I'm not doing any of the ones that are going to be like lights and things yet, because what I'll be doing with those is doing white first and then a clear colour to suggest glowy buttons or transparent buttons. But I'll go off and do all that and I'll get the white ones done as well. It's exactly the same process. So you don't particularly want to have to watch that 13 times. Okay, back to the mandibles, the front bit again. You can see here the Nuln Oil has dried quite nicely now. So what we're going to do, to try and distinguish it from the rest of the metallic parts on the vehicle, we're going to go over with some Agrax Earthshade, and it's going to give it a more browny tone. So exactly the same as with the Nuln Oil, we're just going to go over, not really thinking too much, and just give it a nice coat of Agrax Earthshade. I'm using the base brush here. I figured I might try the base brush and see what kind of finish that gives me. Might help me keep this all kind of smooth and nicely organised on the surface. So we'll give this a go. Okay, now it's time to do something with these here bed rolls. As you can see here, I've done the one on the left. What we're going to do, we're going to take some Mechanicus Standard Grey, and we're going to make it, I've put it on the wet palette, I'm going to thin it a bit more than I normally would. And we're going to do a little bit of funkiness, because we've darkened it with the Agrax Earthshade. So what we need to do now is bring it back, and I'm going to focus on the raised areas. So I'm not going to put paint into the recesses where the Agrax Earthshade is collected, but initially I'm going to focus on the raised areas. And I hope this is coming out on camera, because it's really close at work and I can't get the camera any closer, unfortunately. Okay, so you can see that's come out pretty well. Not too shabby at all. So the next step is to just do a little extra highlight, and for this I've added some Screaming Skull, a little bit of Screaming Skull to the Mechanicus Standard Grey. And all we're going to do for this is sort of an edge highlight, really. We're just going to pick out the edges as best we can, and this is just a little bit lighter than the base colour. So just going to hopefully do it on camera. Pick out these edges just a little bit. Okay, apologies for that last segment. It was a bit chaotic and not very well put together. It was actually really hard for me to film painting these parts and paint them at the same time, because I couldn't get my head close enough. This is why you're not going to see me paint many figures. So yeah, anyway, they've been done now. I've still got to do the skulls on the front. I have done the leather straps. I've added a little highlight on there, and I did the leather pouch on the side, you might see there. What we're going to use to do the leather, we are going to use Steel Legion Drab. We're going to do this on the seats, and I hope this comes out. It looks very dark on my screen. We're going to take the Steel Legion Drab, it's on my wet palette, but we are going to water it down a significant amount, really thin, maybe even like a glaze to a certain degree, I suppose. Because what we're going to do is we're going to see what happens if we just use a really thin wash to start changing the overall texture of this leather. So we're going to concentrate initially around the edges, because that's where the wear and tear would happen. And I hope this is coming out on camera. We're going to kind of make it a little bit bitty and patchy, and we're just going to put some of this wash almost around the edges. I'll see if I can do it on there, you might see it better. I hope you can see it. Unfortunately, this is not the best model to try and film, because the lighting's all in the wrong place. So I've been quite generous on this bit, but this is where, you know, his back will be all the time. I'm going to take some of my excess paint off and just work that around. And what it will do, it'll just add a lighter tone, but it's only a thin wash, so it's not going to completely recolour it. Now what we'll do before we finish everything else and put the figures in, we will do some pastel work which will further improve this and make it look even more dusty and dirty. So let's do the other seat. Yes, apologies, filming the little detail parts is actually really difficult for me. So for all I know, none of this is coming out, or it's not particularly watchable. But I'm doing my best for you. I don't just want to say, here's the bit I painted and this is what I did, because that's a bit sucky. So you can see I'm working it around, I'm dotting it in places and I'm brushing it in others. I hope this is on camera. Just going to work around the edges. I'm going to take off some of the excess paint. And I'm just going to work that a little bit. And we're hoping to get that kind of slightly faded look. We don't want it to look perfectly uniform and neat and tidy. By the same token, we don't want it to look too dark or too light. Okay, now I have to apologise. If you haven't just watched me do all the interior details, it's because I wasn't able really to film it. I could either get the camera close enough and I couldn't get close enough to paint it well, or I could paint it well but I couldn't get the camera anywhere near for you to see what I was doing. So there's probably a lot of stuff I've done here that you won't have just seen. But just in case any of that's been missed, I've gone ahead and painted all the controls in the cockpit and some at the back here. Painted the bed rails on the front. And we've done a couple of little bit of white spot treatment here and there, and I'll take you through what I've done. Let's have a look on the brown, and this applies to this part as well, and the seats. The seats, that little sort of satchel thing and the straps were painted in Rhinox hide. I at first used a very thin wash of Steel Legion drab, just to kind of give a little patchiness and a light tone, and then once that had dried, I dry brushed over it with, again, Steel Legion drab, just to get that kind of faded and slightly scruffy, scratchy effect. Hope it comes out on camera. What else did I do? You saw me painting the little buttons in the Screaming Skull. I picked out some of the buttons and dials in white. It was just white scar. Now I've done that specifically because that's in preparation for when I make them coloured later on. I'm going to use sort of transparent colours, some Tamiya clear colours perhaps, to make them sort of coloured buttons and dials and things like that. But I've done them white now because when I do a clear colour it'll show up better with the white. I don't want to do the clear colour now because they're shiny and there'll be a matte or a gloss coat to go over this. So just in case I have to matte coat over this, I'd rather get the white bit done now. It doesn't matter if it gets matte varnished. I'll leave the clear bits till very last. Painted the back here, again just flat white, same, and under here. What else did we do? Painted the headlights white, again, to prepare them from some clear colours later on. I'll have to get myself some clear yellow of some sort. I don't think I've got any. What else did we do? I don't think I've done anything else then that you've missed. I think that's it. It's just I couldn't really film lots of the interior. So basically, lots of bits done with the white, just in preparation for later on. We've not done any dry brushing of the metallics for, say, the guns and other parts yet. Again, we're going to leave that to the very end, because the last thing we want to do, as you can see here, a lot of the lead belcher I dry brushed, I sponged on late. There, talk English, boy. A lot of the lead belcher I dry. I'm giving up. I need more coffee. A lot of the lead belcher I sponged on right at the start is now faded away and gone. That's fine, because it just gives that kind of old, dirty bare metal look. Right when we finished everything else and we've done all the last matte coats and things and there's nothing else to go on, we'll do a little more sponge work just to bring back the shiny parts, because you will get a mixture of metal that's dirtied up and not shiny and metal that's shiny. So we'll bring those back. You can see on the front here they've kind of lost their edge. What else? That's it so far. So what's the next step? Well, I need to just finish sorting out the grilly thing on the front, the cow catcher. And then I think we're done for all the little bits of detail painting. We can get on with glossing it and doing all the other things, decals and stuff. I haven't painted the acrylic on the front yet. And again, that's purely because when this is finished, the whole thing's going to be matte, apart from the screens and the metal parts. I need this to be super shiny because, I'll tell you why, I'm going to play on the silliness of Warhammer. You get these mass-produced military vehicles that are produced in their hundreds or thousands or millions. And they're all army, and it's all like, you know, oh, we're going to kill people, and they'll probably last about 5 minutes. But they have, like, blaring emblems all over them, and they're often gold or silver. So I'm going to maximise that, the silliness of it. And I'm going to basically make that the blingiest gold you can imagine, so it just stands out. Because it's all silly, it's all nonsense. You get all these Space Marines in their ornate or uniform with the gold aquila and the crests and things. It's like, yeah, that's just not practical. Go and ask any modern military. What do you do with your vehicles and armour? It's green. It's just painted green. Or desert tan. It's painted green quickly in one colour and shipped out to the troops. We don't fart about. So, yeah. So it's funny. So I'm going to make sure that's the very last thing we do probably, is just to get that blingy thing on the front. So I'll go and put this away and we'll crack on with the cow catcher, or the thing on the front. Okay, so we have the cow catcher thing. If you remember, we gave this a wash of Null Oil and then a wash of the Agrax Earth Shades, and it's looking kind of mighty dark and now and grim, like a very dark heavy metal. So what we're going to do, a couple of things we're going to do to this. We are going to go back over with a metallic shade just to lighten up the edges and give it a bit more life, because we wanted to darken this so that when we dry brush again, you'll get darkness left behind in the recessed areas. And then at the very, very end, we'll do a little bit of highlighting with some even more blingy metals that we'll use on just about everything. So for the moment, the next step is to get ourselves the lead belcher again, and you've guessed it, we're going to dry brush, get my Daler Graduate. State of that brush. A filthy, dirty little brush. As I've explained before, this is my favourite brush in the whole world for dry brushing metallics, which is why it's covered in metallics. And got them all up to the ferrule and everything. Now obviously, as a rule, you don't get paint in the ferrule if you can avoid it, because it ruins your brush. However, this is a dry brushing brush, so it doesn't really matter. This is old and battered and knackered, but I love it. So I'm just getting most of the paint off on the piece of tissue. And same as before, we're going to go from the bottom up, just to suggest that's where all the wear and tear happens. So we're just going to come back. Now the shades do obviously give it a matte sort of surface. They don't completely matte it down. There is a little bit of shiny left, but only on sort of edges where the shade isn't quite as thick. And this isn't going to be as intense as a coat as we did the first time when we first dry brushed it. This is mostly just to pick up the edges as I knock the camera. Mostly just to pick out the edges and do a little bit of shading around the edges, the middles of things. Let's go this way for the camera now. Okay, now for the next step. You can see here everything has now been gloss varnished. It was airbrushed with the Pledge Floor Care Finish 2 times more shine. 2 times more shine. You knew I was going to say that. I have to. I'm contractually obliged now. So yes, it's time to do the decals. So everything's been gloss varnish ready. Always gloss varnish first, because it gives it the smoothest possible surface for the decal to go on. That's the trick. If you do it on a rough surface, you'll get air bubbles and silvering. Now, what we're going to do, you do get loads of decals with the kit, and they're really nice decals. They're all particularly entrenched in the lore of the Warhammers. So these are all the ultramarine symbols, and I don't care about the lore. I really don't care. I'm not interested. I mean, I will avoid the ultramarines, because ultramarines apparently are always blue, so there you go. I can't use those. Which is a bit of a bugger. It does show on the box art. Everybody has little numbers on their shoulder pauldrons in white circles. They don't give you white circles. You're expected to paint those on by hand. No, seriously, F you, that's not happening. I'm not painting white circles, because that'll never work. You do get markings, enough markings for shoulder pauldrons if they were ultramarines, because then you get 6 of them and one of them's like got a skull, so you could say that was the commander. But yeah, not using the ultramarine ones. So I'm going to use these Devastator ones, which just kind of look like well, they're just triangles, they're V shapes. So we're going to use those. I'm just going to make it up. I'm not beholden to the law. I'm not doing this for my own army. I'm just making this for fun. So, whatevs. So, you'll have seen this before, but I'm going to show you a handy trick. For decals of this kind of size, small decals, you don't need to use water, even though those are water slides. I'm going to be using two products, Microset and Microsol from Microscale Industries. Microset, all you need to know is the blue one, which is the first one, even though I've got number 2 on there. Blue one, the first one you use. This is what I'm going to use to separate the decal from the film and also to set the decal in place. And then Microsol is done later on to help it bed down and flatten out, remove any wrinkles and crinkles and bubbles. So if you've got a small decal, you cannot bother about water. You just need some Microset and you need the tweezers. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's on camera. We're going to take the decal, we're going to drop it, we're going to turn it over. Hooray! Now I need to make sure these are the right way up. Yes, it needs to be that way up. So we're going to turn it over very carefully. I'm doing this off camera somewhere. It's right at the bottom of the screen if you're looking for it. Yeah, let's just put that there. Zip. Right, so it's off there. Don't know what I'm lining it up for, it doesn't need to be lined up. We're going to take our Microset. Now I have two different brushes from Microset and Microsol, marked 1 and 2, because the bottles are marked 1 and 2, although incorrectly. The only reason I do this is they're two different substances, so one's like a thinner, one's like vinegar. So I prefer to use the same brush for each one so I never get cross-contamination. Stick it down on something like a placemat with some blue tack, because that will stop you knocking it over and then you'll get sadness. So, take your brush, get a nice helping of the Microset, and all you need to do is quite simply soak the back of the decal. Now this is replacing, as I knock the camera, this is replacing water. Now this will help your decal better adhere to the surface and its textures. You can do it with water, it's absolutely fine, but when you do water you've got to mess around and get all the air bubbles out and stuff. This just means it will suck down straight away and it will sort of look much more painted on. So if it is a smallish decal, look at how fast that is. I love these decals because they come off so fast. If it is a smallish decal, give this a try instead of using water. You might find it makes life a lot easier. So what we're going to do, we're going to take most of the Microset off the brush and I'm just going to quite simply slide it off. Now some decals won't be as delightful as this. These Games Workshop ones, they do come off the paper and start sliding around pretty much straight away. That's not moving, so I'm going to put a bit more Microset over it just to loosen it. And then with the tweezers, not the pointy part but the flat end, I'm just going to put that on there where I want it. I'll do nicely. So what I can now do is take my brush again and just very, very gently, because I don't want to move it, just brush over the decal. Now what I'm being careful to do is catch the edge of the decal so the Microset can go underneath it, but not completely cover the whole piece of the model, because this stuff, if you put enough on, or put it on thickly enough, it can eat away at your clear coat, and then when you come to do something like a gunk wash or something like that, what you might find is you get an obvious tide mark around it where paint might collect in the little pits where it's etched away at the gloss coat. So just try and restrict your Microset and Microsol to the decal. So that is now on. I need to leave that the hell alone. It may crinkle up as it expands and contracts, because that's what these solutions do. They expand it and contract it to make it fit. It may go crinkly. If it does, leave it alone. Don't touch it. Don't be tempted to flatten it down or squish it or anything like that. Just leave it. Over the next few minutes it will stretch back out again and it will just flatten down. So we're going to leave that for about 5 minutes, let it dry out, and then move on to the next step. Okay, so the decals had about 5 or 10 minutes to dry off, and as you can see, it's looking pretty good. Now we are lucky with these decals, these Games Workshop ones, that the clear film around the edge is absolutely minimal. There's almost nothing there, so there's not really much more to do, but I'll show you the next step anyway. Some decals will have massive tons of film, some won't, and obviously if there's loads of film you need to deal with it. So you need to make the decal suck down to a surface. Now this is a fairly flat surface, but if it was irregular, had rivets or ridges, or if I was going over that panel line, I want to suck it down to that surface to make it look painted on, and that's where Microsol comes in. Does a similar thing to Microset. It expands and contracts the decal, makes it suck down to the surface, conform to any irregularities, and if there is any clear film it will help get rid of that. Basically what you do is you apply several coats of this, and over time it slowly dissolves the clear film so that eventually you're just left with the printed image and not the actual film around it. So what we're going to do is take our other brush, get the micro sol, and quite simply, same as with the micro set, just very carefully go over the decal, and again as before, take care to go over the decal and just over the edge, just so it catches the edge of the decal and goes under the film if it can. But don't just spread it everywhere over the whole model, because again it can do things to your clear coat, so just take it easy. If there are little bits where there's little air pockets or anything like that, it's trapped underneath, it will suck itself underneath with capillary action and help remove those, and that just pull it down. That's why you go around just over the edge, just so it can capillary action underneath. So that's going to do. I mean, this is a flat decal on a flat surface, so that's probably all I need to do. There's no real visible clear film around the edge that you can see, so I don't need to worry about that. Were this any other kind of decal, I probably need to do several coats, and I'm going to use some third-party Gunpla decals on this, so yeah, they'll need several coats to try and reduce that amount of clear film. But that's it, that's decals. I'll go off and get all the rest of these done. Back in a moment. Okay, now for the next section, while the decals are just sorting themselves out. Now, I have to apologise, I did say at the start of the last episode, I can't film painting the figures. I have to get my head and the camera really close, but I can't get both really close at the same time. And unfortunately, when I'm painting little figures, getting my head close so I can see what I'm painting kind of takes priority. So, yeah, but what I'm going to do is a quick show and tell for you. Now, how I'm going to do this, this one's half painted. I'm going to show you two figures, half painted and one that's a bit further on. Now, I'm going to be obviously listing what paints I've used, and now I put my colours up here in the corner, and if I show you the pot each time, it's going to get in the way of, it's going to be covered up by that list of colours. So I'm just going to tell you what the paints are. Now, because I'm not showing you the pot, if you want to have to go and get these paints, just write down whatever you think it sounds like. I'll show you a couple of them where it's kind of hard, but just write down what you think it sounds like, and when you go to your GW or your Warhammer shop, just say, have you got this paint that I think is called, and they'll say, yes, you mean this paint. I would normally show you the bottles, but it's going to take forever if I do that, and I can't get it on screen here because the captions will get in the way. Don't go and ask for the paints that I list in the corner, by the way. They're my made-up silly names. You probably know that by now, but you know, there's not actually. Although it would be really hilarious if you went into your local Warhammer and asked for a pot of Labia mermaids. That'd be kind of interesting. I challenge you to go into your local GW or Warhammer shop and say, "Do you have Labia mermaids or Cumberton's Funk?" Do it, go on, do it. Anyway, let's go through quickly. I want to get this done quickly because this is the boring, tedious bit that you don't really want to watch. So, this figure has been just base coated. I did accidentally put some null oil on his weapon, but ignore that. The first step was to get the figures all base coated with just their basic flat colours. For the boots, the grips on the gun, I used Abaddon Black. Just straight up Abaddon Black. I can do things to these later that will make them look a bit more, you know, highlighted or shaded. For the gloves and the tubes around the neck, which look like Zaku tubes, and therefore I'm going to paint them like Zaku tubes, they're supposed to be black in my mind as well, but it's going to be easier for me to paint them grey now, and they were painted with Mechanicus standard grey. Easier for me to paint them grey and then do a wash of null oil to darken them than it is to paint them black and try and paint little highlights on, because some of the hands on these figures are really hard to get to, the wrapped round things, so it's not going to be an option. So they're going to be painted Mechanicus standard grey, and I'll darken them with a wash later. The fatigue, so the legs and the arms under the armour, were just painted with Talon sand. I'll show you that one because it's kind of, you might not get it. Talon sand. It's a nice tanny desert colour. The armour was painted exactly the same as the armour on the vehicle with Death World Forest. It's not going to look exactly the same colour because obviously I've not airbrushed this on. I did on the vehicle, and it's not quite fully a thick coat, so it's a different colour, but it's close enough. The leather straps for the sort of the holsters and the belt around the waist and all the little pouches, little brown pouches all over them, they've been painted with Rhinox hide, same as the leather on the vehicle, and these will all be worked on later to make them look better. The gun, the metal parts of the gun were just painted in lead belcher, I have to think then, so just lead belcher brushed on. The other metallic parts, so the headset, the grip for jumping off the vehicle, is buckles on the belts and things like that, and this steel cable were all painted with Iron Breaker. It's a really, really nice, very fine, actually, very fine grained colour, and if you brush it on by just not quite touching the brush to the surface of the model, but just letting the paint do the touching and then drag it along, it does give you this wonderfully smooth finish. Almost like tin. It's like shiny tin. I quite like it. So that's going to look good later on. What else did we do? The hair. I varied the hair between the two dudes. The hair's either painted with Steel Legion Drab in his case, or some of them have got the Rhinox Hide just as a darker brown. The face, the base colour for the face is Bugman's Glow. I'll show you that one as well because that's kind of funny one to know what it's called by just hearing me say it. Bugman's Glow. It's a really nice sort of basic base colour for a face. It's not going to be that colour when it's finished. It's just a nice tone to start you off that you can work around. What else did we do? I think that's everything. The only other one to show you. Oh no, the green for the grenades was War Boss Green. It's quite bright, but we'll darken it down. And this beautiful gold on the Aquila was actually Retributor Armour. I'll show you now. It's one of the white top paints. And I asked the guy in the shop, I said, why has this one got a different colour? And he said, because that one's a bit more expensive. It's got a real fine pigment in it. And apparently Runefang Steel is the same, but mine doesn't have a white top on it. They've only just started doing it. So the little white top means it's a super fine grained pigment. And it is. It's a really nice colour. Now, obviously, once this gets washed with other stuff and weathered, it's going to go dull and not shiny, but we'll be doing more work to bring that back. But it's a beautiful colour. It has it almost tarnishing almost by itself. I could see myself doing Gundam armour in that colour. It's really nice. I have to try and see what it's like airbrush, but it is more expensive. I think it's about £3 or so. It's more expensive than normal paints because he didn't say it's actually got gold in it, but he said it's a very fine pigment. So yeah, but it's a really nice colour. I've not painted the thing on the side of the gun yet. A, because I've forgotten. B, because I haven't decided if it's going to be white or gold. But that's all the colours we used. So it's a quick run through those. Now, he's just base coated. I'll get another dude out. Now we have, let's find another dude. I've left him like that, just, so I can at least maybe show you the shades or show you halfway through. The other guys I've gone further forward. In this chap's case, once all the base colours were painted, I also added, what did I add to him? I added Mephiston Red for the chainsaw blade thing, just for the red colour there. I think that's the only different colour he's got. The binoculars were done in the standard grey, Mechanicus standard grey. You can see here he's got the darker Rhinox Hide hair. Nothing different for him. The blades and here was done in the Iron Breaker. I haven't painted anything like the little buttons on the pouches yet. You see, I've not painted those. I want those to stay shiny, so I'll do those at the very end, just so they stand out a bit. But then what I did was, when that had all been done, all the base coats have done, I gave him a quick wash over with the Agrax Earthshade. Lovely colour. Over most of him, the only parts that didn't get any Agrax were the gloves and the tubes around the neck, because they were done with Nuln Oil. In his case, the binoculars, the grenades, because I want them to be darker, and the metallic part, well, the whole of the chainsaw blade, were washed as well with Nuln Oil. So basically it was all Agrax Earthshade apart from the gloves, the tubes and the weapon, basically. Let's leave it at that, and the grenades here. So it's come out quite nice. That was all given a nice coat. Now I made a boob, and I'll explain it so you don't have to. I didn't shake my Agrax Earthshade properly. I gave it a little shake and then I put it on, and when it dried glossy. And I'm like, is this supposed to be matte? I didn't shake it enough. If you don't shake the shades enough, they dry glossy. So it wasn't a problem. I just had to go outside and give them a quick blast of matte varnish to kill the gloss to make my painting easier. But yeah, just shake the living crap out of your shades before you put them on. Agrax Earthshade should dry matte. So he has now been shaded. And then what I've done since then is I've gone in and actually finished painting the face. Now, I've not painted a face in maybe 30 years. I know I did my little 1/24 scale Fox. That was just a bit of an abortion. I was just messing about. And I did the Tau guys, but they had helmets on. These are the first proper face I've painted in maybe 30 years. And I'm really proud of it because it's come out quite nice. It's not kind of super tabletop gaming style, lots of differentiation between highlights and lowlights. I've kind of gone for a slightly more realistic look. And I even got the teeth. I'm dead proud of the teeth. Look at that little teeth. And for the face, I used, as you know, I used the base coat of Bugman's Glow. Then once that was ready to go, I went over it with some Cadian Flesh Tone. I'll hold that up because, again, it's a funny name. Cadian Flesh Tone. And then once that was done and dried, I then went over again with some Kislev Flesh. Now what I did was I actually thinned the paints a bit more than normal. just a little bit more with normal water. And with the Cadian Flesh, I just worked on the areas I wanted to be the highlight. I want the Bugman's Glow to, and the Agrax Earthshade in the recesses to be like the shadow. So I covered most of the face with the Cadian Flesh tone, but I left the shaded areas like the eyes, inside the mouth, and the corners of the nose, and under the jawbone, the cheekbone. I left those with the shadow from the shade and the darker Bugman's Glow. And I thinned it down slightly so I could kind of fade it around the edges. Once that had dried, I went over again with Kislev Flesh, again thinned a bit more than normal, and I just focused on the highlights, so the ridge of the nose, the eyebrows, the top lip, the bottom lip. And the trick with that is to use your real fine small layer brush. Don't use the artificer brush, that's a bit too small. Use something that you think is a little bit too big. I use the small layer brush. I just went over, and you just kind of flick, you get the brush, and you just kind of, I can't show you, but you get the brush and you flick it up like that, and if you flick it that way and it's thinned, you get this kind of slight shading. If you thin the paint more, you'll be able to very slowly change the colour from the original Bugman's Glow. If you just slap the paint on as you normally would, it'll just change colour to Cadian Flesh tone or Kislev Flesh, and you're not getting that shading. If you thin it down, almost like a glaze, you'll be able to build the colour up slowly, and that's how you get the little shades and fades. Now, I've not done a perfect job. This is not you know, competition standard. It's barely tabletop standard, I guess. I don't know, but I'm really proud of it. It's come out a lot better than I thought it was, and it was a lot easier than I thought to paint the face. The last thing I did was the teeth, and for the teeth I actually got my artificer brush, and I got the tiniest amount of Screaming Skull, and I just dragged it along. Again, I can't show you, it's hard to show you, but I didn't jab the brush in. I dragged it along the teeth with the very pointy end of the brush at about that kind of angle. So, and it took a few goes to build it up, so there's almost no paint on there. I didn't just want to paint it the colour, I wanted it to very slowly build up. So because the brush doesn't touch the whole of the teeth, of course you get a little bit darker bit on the left and right hand side, so it just puts a little bit of fade. If you go and look at it through my visor, it looks terrible, but when you see it at this distance, or even reasonably close with the naked eye, it kind of looks like teeth. So yeah, I didn't want bright white because, you know, I'm sure they have a good dental plan, but it's not Hollywood. And I didn't want it to look too dark because I'm sure they have a good dental plan, even though it's not Hollywood. So that's done. So what's left to do on him now is, and all the other guys, is to build up the colours back again that have been shaded. So work over the legs and the armour and everything else, just to bring back the highlights, because the shade is there to darken things, but we want to then bring back the main colour. When I've done it, I'll show you. But that finishes the long-winded talky bit. I do apologise, I can't physically show you painting them, so there's not a lot of other options for me. But that finishes that bit. Let's go back and have a look at how the decals came out. Okay, right, all the water slides have had a while to dry now. And as you can see, they're all done. I used a mixture of kit decals. Now, I used these two on the side here. So it's a Devastator and its second unit, second brigade. It's supposed to go there, but I put these rolls on there, so I can't do that. And I also used the ones from the kit on the wing. Pating, pating. For the rest of the decals, little sort of warning markings and text markings and little caution things. And this one says hard point something, something, something. I can't remember what it says. It's all kind of gibberish English. And there's one there. I used just X-Decal generic Gundam decals, just stuck them on. Thought I may as well give it that kind of military vehicle look. They work out quite well. They work out quite nicely. It makes sense. If you look at a military vehicle, it's full of little caution signs and warning signs. And it was quite tactical. The little hard point ones, well, I've put them where there'd be hard points. Like there's a hard point where you can take that weapon off and put another one on. In my mind, you can take a weapon off here and put it on. It's like a hard point. That's what hard points are. So there you go. A couple down there. On the back end, I added a couple of little danger ones, because it's saying danger, there's a big ass engine here, don't stand behind it when it's on. And just some generic warning ones. There's a couple that say hoist here, as if it's going to be hoisted up by a crane. So there's one on the back and there's one on the front. See, I'm quite logical about it. I don't just make this stuff up. I make this stuff up, don't I? So it just gives it little bits of interest. There's one there on the vent, and I duplicated that somewhere else. Where did I put that somewhere else? Oh, I did it on the missile pod. There's a vent at the back, which I assume is the exhaust from the missiles. So I put that on the back, saying, as if it says, warning, don't stand behind this bit. Some generic decals on there, and a couple of warning ones on the side. So yeah, that's all done. So all the decals are done. Now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to gloss coat the thing and then carry on with the weathering. I'm just going to go straight to the matte coat. because I need to get this finished, and there is no actual harm in doing a matte coat over the decals as long as it's a coat to protect them. I'm fairly confident they're all bedded down fine. They had 4 or 5 goes of micro sol to get them down in place and conform, so they should be pretty good. I don't think we'll have any problems. I also did some decals on the dudes. The dudes are all now fully finished and painted as I keep knocking the camera. Let's have a look at the dudes. For the dudes, the only decal I used were the little pauldron markings, the little squad markings on there. But the dudes were finished off. What I did basically was, you saw them last time, everything had been washed in the Agrax. Now, the trousers and sleeves, they were given a going over with Screaming Skull, just to bring back the light areas, and then a bit of Ushabti Bone. Yes! I've been waiting since I started doing these Warhammer kits to actually genuinely say Ushabti Bone that I'd used it. Because just go and watch Duncan do his videos on Warhammer TV. Just listen to him say Ushabti Bone. It's just brilliant. So, yeah, the little highlights were done with Ushabti Bone. Truth be told, it didn't come out quite as I planned. I was kind of going for this proper painted Duncan type heavy metal look. It didn't come out that way. I need to practice my fabric material shading. The hard armour, that was gone over with the Death World Forest again, just to bring back the raised areas. In the recesses, I kept the shaded areas. It's the traditional thing of do a shade and then do the base coat back again to bring back the light areas. What else did we do? I went over the metallic areas with a sort of edge highlight of the Iron Breaker. Went over the grenades again. I went over them with some Nuln Oil, and then again with the base green coat colour. The leathers, so the pouches, the holsters and the belts, anything else that's leather, I went over that with some Steel Legion Drab, just dry brushed over. After the Nuln Oil wash, just dry brushed over to bring back the edges and give it that kind of faded leather look. What else did I do? The weapons. The gold Aquila, that was painted with the Retributor armour originally and then given a wash of Agrax. What I did was I went back over it with the Retributor armour just over the edges and in the flat areas, let that dry, and then went over it very, very carefully with some Rune Fang steel just on the sort of the raised areas, just to get the little glint, the little bing on the edges. Exactly the same for the emblems on the weapon. The weapons themselves, the black part of the gun casing, that's just 3 or 4 goes of Nuln Oil just to darken it down. And then the whole weapon was dry brushed with Necron Compound. Just dry brushed with Necron Compound to bring back the edges, because these were matted down, remember. I matte varnished everything before I did all these bits. The last 2 things I did, you may notice, I don't know if you'll see from that distance, but the armour has chipping on it. So I'll zoom in, hang on. We have chipping all over it. I just spent a little while putting some chipping on the armour, and that was all put on. Then the decal was added. And what I've done is I chipped away at the decal with my modelling knife just to put some little chips in there, because it wouldn't make sense to have this painted on marking perfect and clean when the rest of his armour is chipped. Okay, so everything's now been matte varnished, and it's time to take care of the last few details. So we're going to be looking at sorting out the gold parts of the Aquila and the skulls on the side. We've got to do some work on the engines, the bare metal parts, to bring the shine back. And we've got to do stuff with the dials in here. And there's probably something else, all the metallic tube parts and other, like the gun cannon, barrel, gun cannon, Gundam in it, I've got Gundam on the brain, the gun barrel and things like that. And we've got to do something with the lights and the bits that are going to be sort of glowing lights. Let's do the Aquila first. This was painted in Retributor armour. It's a beautiful, beautiful colour. It's not the cheapest, beautiful colour. That was painted in Retributor armour and then was given a wash of the Agrax Earthshade. So what we're going to do first, you can see it's being dulled down quite a bit. So the first thing we're going to do is go in with some more Retributor armour. What we're going to do is we're going to pick out the big areas. So here we go on these bits here. Okay, now just to add to that last section, if it wasn't clear what the gold actually did, this is a skull that I painted on the side, and this is just with the gold and then the wash and then the matte varnish. As you can see, it's quite dull, but after brushing that extra Retributor armour on, you can see now, hopefully it comes out in the light, that Aquila looks much more metal again. It looks fantastic, and it is a beautiful colour. It's what I used on the Aquilas on the dudes as well. It is a wonderful colour. If you get it quite thin, you can get some really smooth colours on there. So that's just to give an example of what that bit of layering did. It just brought back the shine, and that's why I did the gold and the Agrax Earthshade first before I did the matte coat, because I knew the Agrax Earthshade would matte it down anyway, so it didn't matter if I did it before. So yeah, quite proud of that. Now there is one last thing to do, and this is something I'll probably screw up on camera because it's really hard to do it when there's a camera on you. Right, so the next step is to get some Rune Fang steel, which I have here. Then we'll take the excess off of my finger. And now, all we're going to do here is we're going to pick out the edges, and hopefully this comes out all right on camera, because you know me, I'll just screw it up. And what I want to do here is really just kind of pick at the edges. Now, we're going to do this on the skulls as well, on the side. And when you've got something that's not just a flat thing like this Aquila, then what you can do is you can use it to better effect on the skulls. You can start painting, say, the forehead of the skull and things like that, because then you've got more scope for painting highlighted areas. Okay, the next step is to bring back a little bit of the metallic to the edges. If you remember, we did lots of sponging earlier on, before we did all the washes and everything else, and that made the metallics we put on there all kind of dull and grey, but that's fine. We're going to do two things. We're going to do a little bit of dry brushing, just for faded edges, and then we'll do a bit of sponging as well. So let's do that first. We're going to use Necron, do it on camera, Necron Compound, which is basically 100% pigment. It's not really you could tip it up, it wouldn't pour. So it's basically a paint designed for dry brushing. It's called the dry paint. What we're going to do is get a load on the brush. You know how to do dry brushing. Get it off on the tissue. But the big difference is this is designed for dry brushing. It's so thick you couldn't paint this on. It can only be used for dry brushing. And all we're going to do is pick out some edges. So for example, these little grabby hand things, we're going to do those. Oops, dropping it. Just to pick out the edges, just very lightly, and a little bit on the handrails themselves, because we're going to do some sponging again. So we just want to pick out the edges. This is good for picking out edges and fading. Here we'll do some around the edge where the pilots and the co-pilot get in and out all the time. Okay, so you can see the Necron Compound, very subtle. It's just giving a bit of a metallic tinge to the foot plates here and the base in there, just around the edges and in places. But now we want to bring back the real shiny metal, and for that we're going to go back to what we did before, which is go back to the lead belcher. I have my little bit of sponge in a pair of my reverse tweezers. Like I said in the last episode, or was it this one or the last one? I don't remember which. These things, scrubby pads from the kitchen, are much better than my other sponge. They're just more frizzy, so they give much smaller spots. So we're going to take some on the sponge. You've seen this earlier on. Get it, most of it off on the tissue. And it is important to make sure you've got most of it off, because the last thing you want now is a big dot of paint. So we'll make sure we've got most of it off. And now we're going to be a bit more sparing than we were originally. We're just going to really stick to the front end here and just put on some dots here and there. And the real purpose for this is not to make them massively, visible, apart from that one, which is massively visible, but more just to add, for want of a better phrase, specular highlights. Okay, now for more funness, more dry brushing, we're going to work on thensions and tubes and gun. And all we're going to do for this is my old standby Tamiya Chrome Silver X11. Nothing beats this for shiny. I'm just giving it a good shake. Nothing comes close to this for shiny dry brush effects. So, you know what I'm going to do? I've got my old Daily Roundy graduate brush, which I use exclusively for Chrome Silver and a couple of other silver colours. So, not that exclusive, I guess. It's really warm today and I'm just talking nonsense. So, I'm going to load the brush up, get a load of it off on the tissue. tissue. And I want to keep this quite minimal because I want to be able to control this and build it up really gradually. So I'll put the top back on that because that'll just be carnage if I don't. And all we're going to do is dead simply dry brush. Now we're going to try and focus on edges, but we are going to try and lighten the whole thing up. I'm putting on almost no pressure whatsoever, and I'm really just going really gently because I want to build this up so subtly so I don't end up with brush marks. Just delicately putting it on, and it just starts to fade everything a little bit but brighten it at the same time, so that when it does catch the light it has a little bit of that metallic sparkle. And you can see, like there, hopefully that comes out on camera, a little scuff where it put a splash of paint. That's fine, because compared to the sort of the washed and matte varnish paint, it just looks like it's been sort of rubbed clean. So we can go over edges like this, we can work on edges, and I'm also going to do on the goose feathers here. Not really goose feathers, but they're near enough. And with those completed figures now glued into the land speeder, we are done. The land speeder itself is complete. I've still got to do the base, so we're going to do that in a moment, but I'll just take you through. It's all done. Everybody's glued in quite happily. It looks awesome. It looks kind of comedic. You've got like 300 guys in there in this tiny little vehicle. It's like Keystone Cop style. What did I do? I finished off the headlights. If you're wondering how I got the headlights, I haven't got clear yellow. All I did was I got some normal yellow and I thinned it down to almost a glaze, and then just worked it over the white that I'd painted the bulbs for the lights. And if you do that, it's like a glaze. It just gives you a slight tinted effect. I added some chipping to the decals here because they looked too new. I added a whip antenna on the back here, and this is just a piece of sprue that I heated up over a tea light and pulled the two pieces apart, and it made this long thin string. I'd already pre-drilled this, put a little hole in there, so I glued that in. Now, getting the dudes in there, what an absolute ball ache that was. In the end, I had to go for a mixture of Tamiya extra thin, Tamiya regular glue, and white PVA. So the driver, where I use the Tamiya glues, I would scrape the paint away at the point of contact, so on the vehicle and on the feet or the butt of the dude I'm gluing in, and then scrape the paint away, so I've got plastic touching plastic, apply a little bit of glue on both parts, and then just push him into place and hope he stuck. For the captain stood up, this guy and this chap here, I used the thick Tamiya glue just because they didn't have a massive amount of contact area to glue them down to. He's like a bit of a foot and a bit of a foot there, so I used the thicker glue for that. Same principle, scrape the paint away so you've got some plastic in contact, and I kind of slathered it on. Now luckily it didn't damage the paintwork around it, and where it did maybe remove a little bit of paint, I just painted over it and touched it up so you can't see it. The end result is they're in, but they're kind of delicate and I wouldn't want to fiddle around with this. This guy and this guy at the back are glued in place with PVA glue, purely because wrangling them into position was a fiddly affair and there'd be some adjustment needed, and I didn't want to use normal glue because I'd end up just taking all the paint off the whole seat and have to repaint the whole thing once they're in there. So what I did for those was simply, in his case, I covered both of his feet with a healthy amount of PVA, put him in, then put the gun on, which sits above the trigger in his hand, and then use a tiny bit of Tamiya extra thin to glue the gun to the trigger. And then once that had all dried a bit, I added a little bit of glue to the bit where the gun attaches to the vehicle. Now that's only paint on paint. I didn't scrape the paint off, so that's not the best joined there, but he's fine. He's not going to go anywhere. And this guy, he's the one that's probably the loosest fit because he's got so few points of contact. He's got the heel of his left foot and a bit of his right foot, and that was just slathering on PVA. The beauty of PVA is it dries clear. It does dry shiny, but you can go over it with a matte varnish or Lamy and medium to matte it down. It doesn't remove any paint, and it's an easy way to do it. And then if you do go wrong, you can just pull him out again and peel the glue off. You might have a little bit of touch-up painting to do. But the other advantage is, of course, the points where these guys are all glued, you can't really see anyway, so it's all fine. It all came out in the end. But yeah, the visor on this guy was just some Ammo by Mig clear light blue, just dropped into the little recess. Again, I painted it white first, that's why I painted the headlights and his visor white. I did the same blue on his little visor, I don't know if you'll see it there, his little sort of light on his visor. And this guy here was the same blue on that part and a bit of periscope green on the green part. But I tell you, when I was doing this, it was warm in my room anyway, and I was so nervous because I was trying to get them in, and it took me about 2 hours to get them in. I couldn't get this guy, he's grabbing the drop thing, the cable grip, I couldn't get that to line up with there at all. My guess would be, when I was building this guy, I should have had the vehicle already assembled and adjusted his arm to fit properly. No matter how I placed him, though, I couldn't get it to work unless he was pointing the gun into the vehicle, which seemed a bit dumb. So, but the trick with the arm is it's like there's a square nub and a little recess in the arm to lock it in place, so it doesn't seem like you've got a lot of room for manoeuvre, that you can adjust it. So yeah, that didn't quite go according to plan. If I get a chance, what I might do is take a tiny piece of thin sprue and just stick it between the grip and the top piece here to suggest the cable coming out. I've got to touch that in with some paint. But yeah, that's frustrating. I couldn't get him to line up at all. I know other people have, so it's obviously possible. But that is the vehicle done. So what is the next step? Well, the next step is the base. So let me go and get all the bits ready, and we'll get the base done, and then we're finished with this build. So, back in a moment. Right, let's get this base sorted out. Now, the base that comes with this, the flyer base, is like the one that came with the Tau thing. It's got a nice little round base to it, although it's scratched and knackered, so you could never use that as clear, because look at the state of that. It's just horrible. It's just scuffed to crap in the box. And you get these little clear parts with bubbles. Brilliant. Thanks for there's bubbles in there as well. Brilliant. So, yeah, if you're hoping using these actually clear, good luck with that. I suppose it doesn't really matter if you're using it on a tabletop, but I'm using this as a display model, so yeah, it's not going to happen. These things are the tabs that go into it. They're being thrown away because when I did the Tau, the little tab on the end that goes into the vehicle just gently decided to separate itself from the rest of the stick, so ended up having to drill it out of the vehicle because I couldn't get it out. So these things, crap, don't want it, and they wobble as well, which is a bit rubbish. But we're going to use the base. And what I've got for that, the same as I used when I was painting it, I've got some clear acrylic rod I bought from somewhere years ago. I've got tons of different acrylic rods in different sizes. So we're going to use this to mount the vehicle. Now you'll know, obviously, it's bigger than that hole for this thing. So I've got my pin vise ready. I've got no idea what size this is, I just know it's the right size for these plastic rods. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the existing hole, we're going to very carefully just widen that hole out, drill it out. If you haven't got a pin vise, I strongly recommend you get one. They are brilliant little tools for just all kinds of little drilling jobs. Okay, so wind it back out. Come on, come on. There we go. Makes a mess. So now we've got a wider hole. And all we can do now is that will just slot into the base like that. Perfect. Now I don't need to glue it because it's a really tight fit, but I need to take it out, or get it out in a moment, because I'm going to paint this and stuff. So what I want to use is the base that's on the vehicle, which is my throwaway sort of stick. I'll use that, and then when this is all painted and ready, I'll just put this one back in. So I'll go and try and get this out. There you go, done. I need to be able to hold this, so I can't just hold it, so I'll have to put the other stick in there. So what I'm going to do, we're going to put some scenery on this. If you saw me do the Tau Piranha, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use various things. So I need to go and get a couple of little stones and rocks from the garden, and then we'll get this done and get it sort of built and primed. So I'll go and get that done first. Back in a moment. Okay, now's the silly fun bit. I have myself the base, which I have primed in, I can't pick it up, I can't, there you go. Primed in Chaos Black Spray. I have 4 little stones from the garden. If you watch my Tau Piranha thing, you'll know exactly what I'm about to do, so I'm going to do the same thing. And all we're going to do is just going to take some bog standard white craft PVA, or Elmer's glue as it's known to our cousins in the United States of America land. Take your stone. I don't need to be gentle with this, I want quite a lot of PVA, so I know it's a bit out of focus, but I'm just going to splob a load on the bottom. On the bottom? Well, that was common, wasn't it? On the bottom. And all I'm going to do is plonk it down. Now it is going to spooge out like that, but that's fine because we can clean that up in a second. Take another rock, just off camera. And like I said, the good thing about PVA is it's not a permanent glue, it's just a contact adhesive. So it's not really going to do any harm to anything. And if you're building a model with this, if you're gluing canopies onto things, you can use PVA glue as a temporary sort of thing to stick canopies on with, or the final glue to put canopies on with if you want. So that's going to do that one. Do one more. And it's a trick is to get this looking reasonably random. I've got them kind of all in a circle now, which is kind of knacking me completely. So I might have this one overhanging the edge a little bit, just for fun. So a little bit of glue. Oh, if I can get it to work. Okay, I appreciate this is just a big thing in the middle of the picture, covering up everything, never mind. Okay, so they are on. Now what I'll do is I'll get myself a cotton bud and a little bit of water on it. And all I need to do is just get rid of any of this excess. Oops, they will move around, but that's fine. Just wipe off any excess glue, because we're going to be doing other things on here, but it doesn't do any harm just to, oops, get rid of any excess. Okay, so the PVA glue has had probably about 4 hours to dry, and as you can see, still white. It's not fully dry. In reality, PVA glue takes about 24 hours to fully dry, but it's fine, we can carry on working with it. You can see I've gone ahead and I've glued on some of the little bits that I left off the vehicle by mistake, the little knapsacks and the ammo crate. I still need to go back and touch up these gold things with the gold and the runefang steel, but I can do that later, it's no biggie. What I need to do now is put some life into this base. Now, like I said, if you see me do the tower one, you know what I'm going to do here, but it's the same principle. We're going to use a texture paint called a Grellan Earth, and I love this stuff. This is great. This is a paint, if you're not familiar with it, if you've not seen my my Tau Piranha build, I'm just going to put it on a base so I don't spill it. This is a texture paint. Texture paints are, as its name suggests, paints that include texture. Nearly spilled it then. Paints that include texture. So some might come out like dirt and dust, some like sand and gravel. This one, well, I won't spoil the surprise in case you don't know what this is. But the trick with the Grellan Earth is just to slap it on. But the real trick is to slap it on quite thickly. The thicker you apply it, the better and more pronounced the effect. So I'm just going to go around and slap it onto the base. I'm not worried if it goes down the side and the edges. I can always sand those if I need to. I might wipe them off after when I've done this. I'm going to try and stay away from the hole in the middle, because I don't want to block up the hole where the rod will go, and I can work my way around the blocks. But it is important to get a good thick coat, so I sometimes find what I do is I'll put it on, but I'll go a bit thin around the edges just by the virtue of the way I brush it on. So just make sure you get a good thick coat and pay attention to around the edges where you tend to go a bit thinner. Okay, so I think you'll agree the Grellan Earth has come out looking pretty darn cool. I love this stuff. You see why we had to do the black base coat underneath, because if we did like a white base coat, you'd see white through these cracks. Now, we're nearly done. Nearly done. A few things left to do, and we'll whiz through them really quickly. One thing I did want to show you, these 3 items that I glued on with white PVA, I decided to dump that idea because there wasn't that many point of contact, so instead I used super glue. And there's a very good reason why I don't use super glue very often. And you'll see there, it's that. I hate that. Sometimes super glue will fog up clear, but it will always fog up clear parts, but sometimes it will fog up painted parts as well if it gets near the paint or just in the wrong place. So I'm going to have to touch that in now. Not a major problem, but that's why I don't use super glue. So when I was looking at gluing the figures to the speeder, I thought I could super glue them on, but it's just going to mess up the paint job on the whole goddamn vehicle. So yeah, that's that kind of frosting there. That's why I don't use super glue. So what is left to do? Well, to be honest, not much. First thing we need to do is we need to give this a nice bit of colour. So we're going to take some Agrax Earthshade and we're going to shade. And all we're going to do is take our shade brush, or a shade brush, or a big brush of any kind. Give the Agrax Earthshade a good shake, because if you don't, it will dry glossy, as I found out just the other day. And I've got to be careful, because this is the thing I normally put my Agrax Earthshade bottles on, so I've got to not spill this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over these parts. Now you have to be careful, because it's very easy while this stuff hasn't yet been varnished or anything else, it's very easy to accidentally dislodge these little flakes. So just be very gentle as you brush this on. I'm not being careful. I don't care if it pools. I'm just getting it on there to shade. I'm going to do it over the rocks as well. I'm just getting it on there to shade everything. Okay, so the shades had time to dry. I also went over with, like I said, some Nuln Oil and some Athonian Camo shade, which I've been waiting to use. It's like a green shade, and it just gives it a nice patchy texture, and some green on the rocks suggests, like, you know, moss or algae or something. Just dirties it up nicely. We're going to put some grass in here, so you don't want it to be like a desert completely with grass. Next up is the dry brushing, and we're going to use a Talon sand. So we're going to get myself my, what size is that? Large dry brush. We don't need to be delicate here or careful, so we can use a big ass brush and get it done most fastly. So take most of the paint off on the tissue. Now, it's not exactly a brilliantly bright light colour, but it's different enough from the base colour just to make a bit of a difference. It'll just blend it all together. So we'll go over the earth. Now what we'll also do is go over the rocks as well, just to fade them a little bit, to pick out the details on the rocks. Okay, now with the dry brushing dried, you see it's come out quite nice. Time to add some tufts. Here we have some, what are these, Middenland tufts from Citadel. Just little tufts of grassy things, not like little tiny creatures. And all we're going to do is, these are self-adhesive, so we're just going to pick them off as best we can and plonk them down. And this is as complicated as this bit actually gets. And then give them a bit of a tussle, so they're a bit spiky. Now what we can do here, we can use these to cover things up. So for example, where those little bits of the Agrellan earth came off, nobody will ever know. Who could ever know that there was actually a missing piece of paint there? They never will. It's impossible for them to know. So we can do that. Makes sense to put them around things like rocks where there might be soil and water. And it also, if you've got any areas where, so yeah, like I used PVA glue, any areas where, you know, there's bits of shiny PVA glue or little globby shapes, you can use them there just to hide that a little bit. So you can just put these wherever you want. See if we've got an area that needs hiding. And so with the tufts on, a coat of matte varnish and the metallic accents brought back, we are done with the base. The base is now complete, and that completes the build. So all we need to do now is put the vehicle onto the base, get it in the little spinny thing booth area, and let's have a look and see how we did. The spinny thing is out, and that can mean only one thing: build complete. I am super pleased with how this has come out. I couldn't be more pleased if I tried about the figures, considering it's the first time, like I've said before, that I've done figures in 30 years properly. I think I've done all right. My memory of doing figures was like 30 years ago with Tamiya paints, and they were just basically ass. So that's what I was thinking when I was coming up to paint these, and I was dreading it. I put it off for 2 days. But in the end, I bit the bullet and dived in, and I had a real blast painting them. And partially that is down to the paints being really fun. I'm really adoring these Citadel paints. But partially down to the sculpts of the figures and the moulds. I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, now it is my opinion, so feel free, absolutely free to tell me I'm an idiot and I'm wrong. I don't think I've ever made, in fact I know I've never made, figures as nice as these before. They're so wonderfully moulded and crisp and detailed and not flawless, that's a bit of a thing to say, but everything is just perfectly designed for you to brush paint over. Edges are crisp and nice and raised, so details you can easily get to with the brush without covering the whole thing. If only other manufacturers made figures as nice and crisp as these, I'd be much more, much happier to make figures. As it stands at the minute, I'm more than happy to make more Warhammer figures, and I know I've actually got something coming to me from a follower that will kind of make me make more figures going down the line, but we'll talk about that another time. But yeah, I've absolutely had a blast. I can't recommend either this kit or other Warhammer kits enough, if you're just getting into model making and you're doing, say, brush painting, you're not got as far as airbrushing yet, or maybe you don't want to airbrush at all, give one of these kits a try. They're kind of designed to be brush painted ultimately anyway, whether you do a vehicle or the figures. If you're a hardcore veteran model maker, but you've never tried a Warhammer kit before, again, give them a try. Try this one, or the Tau, or Piranha, or any of them. They're just great fun. They're super simple. They're not particularly complicated. They're super simple to build. The instructions aren't brilliant, but you get there. But the detail is so nice. If these guys actually made real world vehicles, if they put their mind to like modern day armour or World War II armour or planes or anything like that, there's a potential they'd actually blow people like Tamir out of the water. But they don't. They do this fantasy stuff, so hey. But yeah, if you've never tried a Warhammer kit, certainly recommend it. Now, I'm also going to say, if you've never tried the Citadel paints, do give them a go. I'm not sponsored by or affiliated with GW at all. I just got their paints and absolutely adored them. Now, I know there are other paints out there, Vallejo's Game Colour and P3 and stuff. But like I've said in the past before, I've got a trillion Tamir paints in a cupboard. I'm slowly, getting my collection of Citadel paints up. And I only got the Citadel paints because I was building the Tau Piranha and I wanted to try it the way you're supposed to do it, the way Duncan shows it. I wanted to try and do that. But I like them so much, I'm buying more. Normally I don't go out and buy lots of new paints because I've already got tons of paints. So, but over time I'll probably get different paints as well, and I will try things like P3 and Vallejo Game Colour and others. But right now I'm using the Citadel ones, and I can't tell you enough how good they are. I'm absolutely adoring them. I wish I could make everything just with Citadel paints, but hey, I can't. Anyway, little positive rant over. I don't know where I went with that. It's 1 trillion degrees in this room. I am sweating cobs. It's not pleasant. I need to wrap this up. Oh, it's so hot. You can't tell you how hot it is, and I can't have the fan on. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. It's only been a quick 2 episodes, this one rather than spread out into multiple episodes, just because I wanted to get it done. I gave myself a week, and about a week and a half is how long it took, so that's not bad. You know, I'm not the fastest builder in the world, but I like to take my time. But I gave myself a week. This is done now, so next up is the big 22-inch Eagle transporter from Space 1999 for e-models. Now, that's going to start probably the next few days. My workbench is free. I just need to wait for the weather to cool down a little bit, because filming is really, really hard in this weather. Once that is going, I can't build anything else. It will take up my whole desk, so once that's going, that's it. I will be doing, obviously, once that's done, I've got some other things to build. I've got my Warhammer Valkyrie, I've got Gunpla and stuff to do. I need to finish that Zaku at some point as well. Yeah, I need to do that. So don't worry, there'll be more stuff. When the Eagles go in though, there'll be a week of quietness because I need to leave it a week between e-models having it and me having it. So don't worry if there's a week of no videos. There'll be a week delay. Patreon subscribers, there will be more exclusive builds coming for you guys once the Eagle's done. However, obviously, once the Eagle is going, you will get the Eagle videos at the same time that e-models people get their videos. So a week before, you'll get the sneak peek and get to watch the Eagle videos when e-models get them. So that's the way I do e-models builds. They're released on my channel a week after e-models have them, unless you're a Patreon supporter, in which case you get to see them at the same time. So there you go. But yes, there will be more exclusive content coming. It's just a question of time at the moment. But yes, thank you so much for watching. Do go along to, you probably know about it, but if you don't know, do go along to the Model Makers Boom Hut. It's the group that we set up, myself and other Treehouse members, for people like yourselves to hang out, talk about models, show off what you're building, get advice and feedback from other model makers, and also just be a little bit silly. It's for people with sort of a 7-year-old child sense of humour, but that also make models. It's just a cool, fun, safe place to hang out. There's no rivet counting, no bitching, no snarkiness. We don't allow any of that. You go on and you're like that, you get banned. So, you know, many groups on there, they're kind of bitchy and snarky, and you get your rivet counters. We don't allow any of that. So do feel free. The address is here. Where's the camera? The address is here. It's free to join. Just click the join button, and then we say, okay, you're joined, and then you're in. You can post up to your heart's content. But yes, go along and join that. And obviously, if you're watching this video and you're not a subscriber of mine, do feel free to subscribe. I really appreciate it. I try and publish content as often as possible, at least once a week, sometimes more, depending on what I'm working on. I also do live streams for Destiny. Myself and the Treehouse members do live podcasts on an ad hoc basis. We usually try and do the second Saturday of every month, sometimes a bit more. But there's live video podcasts and other kind of shenanigans. But yeah, go along and check out those. Subscribe. Remember to press the bell at the bottom, so you get the notifications. Giant finger. Press the bell at the bottom as well so you get notifications. YouTube don't bother telling people that. I'll shut up now. It's so hot. I'm actually just, I'm in a fever dream. I really need to go outside and just chill for half an hour. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Go be cool. Go make something cool. And as always, adios amoebas.